Mourn all ye groves and darker shades be seen, let groans be heard where gentle winds have been. Ye Albion rivers, weep your fountains dry, and all ye plants your moisture spend and die. Ye melancholy flowers which once were men, lament until ye be transformed again. Let every rose pale as the lily be, and winter frost seize the anemone. But thou, O hyacinth, more vigorous grow, in mournful letters thy sad glory show. Enlarge thy grief and flourish in thy woe, for Bian, the beloved Bian's dead. His voice is gone, his tuneful breath is fled. Come, all ye muses, come adorn the shepherd's hearse, with never fading garlands, never dying verse. Mourn, ye sweet nightingales in the thick woods, tell the sad news to all the British floods. See, it is to Isis and to Cham conveyed, to Thames, to Humber, and to utmost Tweed, and bid them waft their bitter tidings on, how Bian's dead, how the loved swain is gone, and with him all the art of graceful song. Come, all ye muses, come adorn the shepherd's hearse, with never fading garlands, never dying verse. Ye gentle swans that hunt the brooks and springs, pine with sad grief and droop your sickly wings. In doleful notes the heavy loss bewail, such as you sing at your own funeral. Such as you sung when your loved Orpheus fell. Tell it to all the rivers, hills, and plains. Tell it to all the British nymphs and swains, and bid them too the dismal tidings spread of Bian's fate, of England's Orpheus dead. Come, all ye muses, come adorn the shepherd's hearse, with never fading garlands, never dying verse. No more, alas, no more that lovely swain charms with his tuneful pipe the wondering plain. Cease are those lays, cease are those sprightly airs that wooed our souls into our ravished ears, for which the listening streams forgot to run, and trees leaned their attentive branches down, while the glad hills lost the sweet sounds to lose, lengthened in echoes every heavenly close, down to the melancholy shades he's gone, and there to less banks report his moans. Nothing is heard upon the mountains now, but pensive herds that for their masters low, strangling the comfortless about they rove, unmindful of their pasture and their love. Come, all ye muses, come adorn the shepherd's hearse, with never fading garlands, never dying verse. That is the beginning page and a half of a 15-page poem in pretty much perfect English verse for singing. I can't sing personally, so that reading is as good as you'll get from me, unfortunately. And I pulled that from Ezra Pound's ABC of Reading, which the entire point of this book is basically to convince you that there is incredibly good literature, literary style, prose, verse, poetry, and so on throughout the history of writing. Now, there are some limitations if you're like me and you only speak English. Ezra Pound obviously recommends learning better languages because English is not exactly designed for poetry. There's a common refrain that English is three other languages hiding in a trench coat. And there's a lot to be said for that. And I think there's actually a fourth language nowadays, which is the advent of scientific language. And I'll have more to say on that in a future video. But the reason I wanted to bring that up is because I'm mostly talking to readers of genre fiction right now, and also people who write genre fiction like I do. What I want to argue right now, you can consider advice if you're a reader. I think it's basically mandatory if you're a writer. And that is to seek out the best writing that you can get your hands on and read it, study it, consume it. I'm not saying only read, 17th century poetry because they did it better back then or something. But when you get significantly outside what is particularly like modern market trends with prose, my headset dying on me aside, when you get outside of like the standard style that you will see in a lot of bestsellers, they're all kind of written the same. And that's because the modern novel is kind of in a self reflective feedback loop because everyone's chasing that bestseller status. So if you want to write a bestseller, obviously you study bestsellers, right? But then you end up in this area of like imitating imitations. When if that's if that ends up being your only frame of reference, your only idea of what good fiction is, you're not actually going to be measuring quality well. Now, I actually like the way modern stories are written, generally speaking, but by branching out to harder and more literary subjects and books and styles, and when I say harder, I do mean harder. It takes more effort to read a book by Vladimir Nabokov than it does to read a Colleen Hoover book. Everybody knows that. Now, if you want to like normalize enjoyment and satisfaction per hour of reading, there are definitely crap books I've read, like Konosuba is probably more enjoyment per minute than a Nabokov novel gives me. Because I do find myself having to reread passages, think about them, cross-reference. Nabokov makes you jump around because that's how he writes stories. They're not linear, and that makes them interesting. But there are other things like sneaking out. Just last month, I sought out a translation of the Faust play by Goethe. Not because I ever plan to write a play, although I may. Not because I ever plan to write in 3,000 lines of rhyming couplets. But because when you get that kind of restriction of quality of meter and voice and stressors in your syllables, you can see what the person is doing and why they're doing it better, and then you can bring that back to the more standard, more palatable, more easier to read stories. You know, your Colleen Hoovers, your Leviathan Wakes, your Discworld stuff. When you go back to the more Orwellian style prose is what a lot of people will claim that they're writing, which is supposed to be that you don't notice the prose. I don't necessarily recommend that, and I think a lot of people are lying if they make that claim, but that's another video again. But when you get really, really good writing in your repertoire, that you've experienced it, that you have put some thought into it, and you have comprehended what can be done with the English language, you will get a better appreciation of what an actually good YA story is doing. And you'll better be able to tell apart a YA story that is competently written from some hack who is just regurgitating tropes that they enjoy and they think will sell books, and they manage to put together a convincing marketing platform that bamboozled you into buying their garbage. So that's my recommendation to readers. You can find a lot of really good books in the public domain at your local library, online for free. The public domain, you can get downloads of them. You just got to be careful about translation rights. And I recommend all aspiring writers, storytellers, and crafters and so on study at least a bit so you get the context of what the English language is capable of compared to what you are targeting to do, because there's nothing wrong with reducing the effort of understanding to get your storytelling across. Not everyone wants to read a style-heavy story, but maybe your story really needs a moment where the character is introspective, where they're overwhelmed with the majesty of what they're seeing in front of them, when they're terrified out of their mind. Maybe that story is going to need a page that is stylistically notably different, and that you can create that juxtaposition between like a very boring way you describe the mundane world compared to this shocking thing that has happened, which is the fixation of the story being told. And the ability to write that in a different style will really drive the craft up in anything that you're writing, and therefore what I want to see on the market to be read. And one final note. This book was read as part of my writing group's book club about 2 months ago. We do a monthly book that the group of us read, most of us at least. It's totally optional. And we read it together with some planning, and then we discuss it all the time. And now that I'm launching this YouTube platform, I'm actually going to be announcing the books that we're targeting. And the goal is to bring on a bunch of people at the end of every month to have a roundtable discussion on the book. What was good? What was bad? You know, we're currently reading Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and I really, really like the dialogue in Jane Austen's novels. I don't enjoy the book very much. I think the book has character and prose and pacing and scene action, maybe not flaws, but it's clearly in a style that I don't enjoy. I don't plan to write, but I want to talk about the dialogue, the wittiness, the quip, the subtext, how characters are written intentionally stupid to juxtapose against the dynamic of the two people who are on the same wavelength. It's all very well done, and that's why I'm reading through it to study and become a better writer. It feeds this information and this style and the experience of reading it into my repertoire for me to work with. So stay tuned. Drop a sub if you are interested in some monthly book club stuff that you can follow along. Cheers.